Welcome to the show with me, Lisa Gibbons. I'm delighted to be joined by Kurt Pittman today as our guest. And Kurt is co-founder and CEO of Bigfan.io. And it's very relevant today as we're seeing lots of headlines. The Premier League has joined the world of NFTs. So I'd like Kurt just to, if you could tell me a little bit about how you ended up in the world of blockchain from your background, and where is your background? Where did you come from to end up here in the first place?
Thanks, Lisa. Thanks for having me. So as you may tell from the accent, originally from Auckland, New Zealand. I spent my time trying to craft a career playing rugby, and as a backup, went into the world of sports management. And having spent a few years at the New Zealand Rugby League, I sort of set off for Europe. UK ancestry and all of those good things that allow New Zealanders to travel quite well. And when I landed in London in 2003, I started crafting my career there, and effectively spent 3.5 years with Harlequins, and went into a couple of years working in an investment project with Sport England, looking at their South London region. And then I landed with Fulham Football Club as effectively head of commercial marketing with Fulham while they were in their Premier League years on their run to the Europa League final, and spent a lot of time crafting out their demand creation and matchday experiences and fan data and all of those wonderful things that were going to drive the commercial business. And then on their relegation from the Premier League back in the 2013-14 season, voluntary redundancies were going right because in the Premier League, you're effectively cutting a zero off your revenue line. So I was fortunate enough to land with Brentford Football Club, who were going in the opposite direction. So they'd just been promoted from the third tier into the second tier, or known as the Championship in the UK. And as sales and marketing director, spent my time there helping them build out their business and get Premier League ready and also move stadium. So that was a sort of a 5-year stint off the back of another 5, won both in football, and landed in Dublin. Arrived in Dublin in October 2019, and it was actually the day after. Unfortunately, the All Blacks knocked Ireland out of the Rugby World Cup. So
not allowed to talk about that.
I felt like I might get turned around at Dublin Port when I arrived, but luckily the New Zealand passport, the UK passport got me through. But effectively from that point on, and I give you that level of depth because of the relevance to the conversation that that we wanted to have about the sport and Web3, and in particular blockchain. In exploring options to do and landing in the pandemic, I was introduced to Eugene O'Brien, who's co-founder for Bigfan. And we spent a little bit of time trying to understand his idea of digital collectibles and sport using blockchain. And fortunately, I had spent a little bit of time at Brentford exploring how we might deliver tickets using blockchain to mainstream fans. And it was using an application called Tix and Go. It was effectively allowing us to take away some pressure and risk around safety and security for match days by ensuring that we were collecting data from all of the attendees heading into the ground, which some in the decentralized world that we talk about in Web3 might cringe at that prospect. But in terms of relevance to sport, I think we've got to remember that we're trying to shift them from Web2 across in a way that adoption is seamless and frictionless to the Web3 world that we all know and have been building around. And so with that in mind, we set about with Bigfan to start exploring, and reached out to previous colleagues and peers around the football community and into rugby as well, and knocking on some other sports doors. And come April 2022, we found ourselves accepted into the Techstars, the Launchpool Web3 Techstars Accelerator program based here in Dublin. Pete Townsend, our MD, shout out to Pete, and Hugh McGurr. They accepted us in as part of that cohort, and from then on, it's just been it's been a phenomenal ride, journey, build, meeting amazing people, getting to know the likes of yourself and the rest of the the Web3 Island Network as we connect on Telegram and what have you. So as far as a bit of a background and a run through and some relevant points, I think, how does that sound?
Yeah, that sounds great, and I mean it's very relevant, and I think you're moving in the right direction where all the sports bodies seem to be going and looking and discovering. I suppose for me it'd be interesting, the teams that you're speaking with and the organizations that you're speaking, what are the feedback and the questions and the concerns that they have when they're saying, okay, we're thinking about taking this step with you into Web3 and discovering this world of opportunity. What are the benefits that you're presenting in front of them, the opportunities with Bigfan, and then what are they coming back with? I suppose that's for me, I'd be like very interested into hearing some of the feedback they're giving you.
Sure. I think, look, we live and die by the narrative that's out there in the marketplace, and that can be built up with a load of perceptions, right? So, FTX falling over, you hear screams and shouts like I guess like you would do in the playground, of all these noises coming around and people hearing lots of one thing and not understanding the depth behind it, and actually there's some substance there. So with FTX falling over, that's really hurt us in terms of the conversations, not to the detriment of what we're doing, but more about having to dig a bit deeper in terms of understanding and explanation, and give them some more confidence that all is not as bad as it seems on the surface and what they're hearing out loud. The bear market has obviously had a knock-on effect, not just in terms of the crypto winter that we're facing, but just the broader economy. So all of those things are absolutely true and relevant to the conversations we're having now. As more projects go live, the sense of risk is starting to become a little bit more measured in terms of the conversations we're having. So how can we do this in a soft, frictionless way is a way of interpreting those conversations. How do we try and adopt this technology in a way that we're not going to scare our fans away? We're not going to get accused of rug pulls and all of these, these phrases that have hit sort of the mainstream conversation, if you like. And so we've got a fairly clear idea on how we want to attempt to do that. And it goes back to that point I made about trying to shift a stakeholder group from something that they know in Web2, the e-commerce world that they're embedded and immersed in and understand and have confidence in, to stepping in a world where they're in complete control of their wallet and not understanding the magnitude of that necessarily, as a whole. And so there's a heck of an education process that we have to work through on that front. But by and large, I think as long as we're finding someone who either wants to advocate internally through all the various conversations we have in the networks we have, versus some of these programs that are coming out now, like Southampton Labs, which is a collaboration with Southampton Football Club, where they're taking in a cohort of technology providers across a range of areas, much like what the IRFU and Enterprise Ireland are doing at the moment.
Okay.
And trying to understand who the providers are out there, with a view of being able to bring them in and line them up with the objectives and outcomes they're seeking from adopting the technology. And it's not just with Web3; it seems to be across a fair few digital areas and tools.
I think what you're doing, from what you just said there, the familiarity side of it is really important, and it's really clever to do it that way, because I think when people mention even the term NFT or metaverse, it's foreign to a lot of organizations, and we have a little project there with Shabeen coming out in the metaverse as well, and trying to explain and get people to understand what's happening and how easy it is just to step in, to take one step. Then you can take further steps if you want, but if you don't have to either. So I think you're very, very cleverly building up that familiarity with education. It's really important. And the trust, I suppose, the trust element, establishing trust and safety, would they be two terms that would come up in conversation a lot as well?
Yeah, definitely. I think having experience sat on that side of the fence, helps quite a bit, because having empathy for the challenges they have on a day-to-day basis, let alone understanding some of the politics and hierarchy of decision making within those organizations, where some are quite small and the others can be quite tall, if you like. And that certainly helps. I think one of the things you touched on, NFTs and metaverse, and we talked about blockchain before. We don't use those terms. We've made a point of not using those terms because, unfortunately, with the early success and the loud noise and spotlight that we've attracted with amazing projects like the Bored Ape Yacht Club and what have you, the downside is the negative ones have created that perception that we're tackling on a day-to-day basis. So what we do proactively is try and talk about the utility up front that the technology enables, rather than the technology itself, because in that guise of shifting them from Web 2 to Web 3, if we talk to them about bringing technology in that's going to allow them to create a new revenue stream in terms of collectibles, looking at historical content and IP, or helping them give more functionality for existing products like membership, by using an NFT and allowing them to be able to enable fans to trade those at the right time, but not with a view of seeking profit, but with a view of making sure that if they're not utilizing it, that someone else can utilize it. So there's some ready-made areas and existing utility that can get enhanced with the technology. Mm-hmm. And likewise, on the other side of the coin, it's loyalty and rewards. And how do we reward fans for the loyalty they're showing, and how can the technology help us do that in a much better way that ultimately allows the fans to put their identity at the heart of all of this, their identity with that club.
Yeah, and identity and copyright and their IP is so important to them, as you know well, because you've been on the inside. And I suppose that's really interesting point that you just made as well. You have the insider knowledge, and often, I find and I interview a lot of projects across all of the ecosystems in Web3, and a lot of them have just, come straight in. They might be young, They might be in their 20s and have a course done in Solidity, a developer course or an engineering course, and have built up a project from scratch, but that experience is so needed and so valuable in the space. So I really think that you'll shine through for having that insider knowledge in the next few months, not to mind the next few years. But let me circle around to Bigfan. So in terms of the features of the platform and what you're planning on the roadmap, can you walk us through some of the opportunities that there are for sports teams in the near future?
Sure. So I guess in terms of functionality, we've sort of focused on bringing through so effectively a SaaS platform. The destination of a SaaS platform, enabling who we call our underdogs to adopt Web3 technology at a time when they don't necessarily have the capacity and the resource in-house, be it commercial, marketing, IT, to be able to understand the technology and adopt it in a way that that they can make the most of it. So by providing a SaaS solution, which gives them some tools that allows them to offer these new products or existing products like membership, like digital collectibles, in a frictionless way, to achieve that, to make it a more Web 2 experience, we're using tools like Web3 Auth, which allows us to give them an opportunity to sign up, but automatically create a Web3 wallet in the background. That is quite seamless for them. And obviously the communication that follows in terms of all of the relevant protections around private key numbers and seed phrase and so on. But the intention is to give them a somewhat Web 2 e-commerce experience to sign up, and then take them through that process of, effectively the thing that we champion quite a lot in terms of this frictionless launch, if you like, is to actually give something back to the fans, to give something back to the community that they have in the form of a collectible that has some some meaning, significance to them. So, leaning on the brand, if you like, or leaning on a celebration moment, like winning a championship and being able to give them a digital version of what the team has won, for instance, is a really simple and effective way of achieving this. And then taking them on a journey of reviewing all of the insight and data that we're collecting from the users, not necessarily private details unless they give us the access to it, but giving them that insight that they can then start enriching how they manage the commercial business is one of the key features of what we're creating, because it's super important to sports rights holders as it stands in their Web 2 world, let alone moving into Web 3.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I love the idea you mentioned there of rewarding loyal fans that have been loyal, for the last 10, 20 years and don't necessarily want anything, but they deserve something for that dedication like I'm thinking of New Zealand rugby, the All Blacks, or Munster rugby, who's my team. I mean, the loyalty there is unquestionable, and I mean, they're more loyal to, some of the fans that I know are more loyal to Munster than they are to their own families, So that
I've been dragged into the Leinster world. I've gone into the Leinster world, so I'll be looking forward to that the match between the two when when that happens.
Always a very hot topic. We can't even speak about it in the podcast because someone will say something to me afterwards from home. And the other interesting thing I find about your background in particular, Kurt, is that you're an ex-player. And I find in this space, there's opportunities for ex-players who might, who might say, I want to change career path, but don't know where to start, kind of thing. It's such a nascent, industry that there's opportunity to just step in or walk in and carve out an area for yourself. So did you find that transition quite nice, quite easy? And would you be recommending other ex-players or players that to consider options in this space?
Absolutely. I wouldn't discourage anyone from exploring it, but I would seriously urge them to as we say, do your own research and really dive into it, go and explore it, talk to people, try and understand what their learnings are, because let's face it, we are still at such an early stage with the technology we're crafting at the moment, and there's a long way to go in terms of learnings and what we're seeing from projects that have failed, let alone projects that have succeeded. So don't be in a hurry to do something. Would be the key thing, and from my experience would be don't be in a hurry to do something. But I would encourage people to explore it, because like it or not, we've seen it with Web 1 and in terms of browsers and being able to read on the web, and then Web 2 kicks in with social media, and read write comes to the fore, and now we're into Web 3. It's here to stay from everything I can see and have learned on the journey that I've been through. So I would encourage them to not be in a hurry to do something, but seriously dive into it.
And I find, and again coming to your question, but I have a different background. I love music and arts, that's my thing, culture or whatever. But I find with my wallet now, my crypto wallet, it represents a little bit of me. It's my identity. So my poetry NFTs are in there, my art NFTs are in there, whoever I support is in there, my music NFTs. So do you imagine in the future that sports fans will have their wall of fame in their own wallets and stuff? I think it's a new version of ownership in comparison to what we see now as the Instagram of the world. I used to use Instagram, and you're putting up your identity. You're saying, okay, well, today I'm out picking leaves, because I like picking leaves or whatever it is. And, tonight I'm going to be at a concert, and you'll take a picture at a concert. But the wallet is, you own a piece of that concert, or you own a piece of that journey. So it's a very interesting idea.
Yeah. I guess that's where I guess I touched on before when we talk about putting fan identity at the heart of it. We put that into context with how early on we are in adopting the technology. There's some amazing stories out there like Sorare and Dapper Labs and so on. But talking about digital collectibles, talking about enabling existing products and giving them more functionality in a taking Web 2 to Web 3 piece. Ultimately, the more fans that are unlocking Web 3 wallets, it is absolutely going to be the location for their digital passport. It's going to be the way that they demonstrate their support and their fandom for a particular club, league, or team, or even individual talent. It's so at the heart of it, but also I think not to forget, we strongly advocate this balance between online and offline. So while we might talk about exploring metaverse experiences over time as it develops and becomes more integrated, and we find the right location for the rights holder based on what their objectives are, where to go and engage with their fans because they're already there. This wallet will also streamline maybe some of the activities they're doing offline as well, in terms of experiences and meeting and greeting players and training settings and lunch after training environments, or time with the manager, even online one-to-one chat. So there's so many experiences that can be enabled and enhanced by adopting by how we see the technology being adopted.
Yeah, very well said. I like that as well, that you're focusing on the experience side of it, because I think that will play a pivotal role for all intersections, sports and Web3, music and Web3, fashion and Web3, events and experiences in real life will play a very pivotal role in the adoption phase. So in terms of, just to finish this off, I'd love to get, I was going to ask you for one piece of advice. Now I'm going to ask you for two, because I know more about your background. So one is for Bigfan and for teams who want to experiment and discover what it's all about. Give us a lowdown on that. And two, if you can give us a piece of advice for Web3 projects that you see, because you have the experience from the Web 2 side, when they're communicating with Web 2, with the world of Web 2, is there anything that you would advise them to not do or to do? I think that would be really beneficial, because a lot of the listeners of Blockleaders are in the blockchain space already.
So I'll take the second one first.
Brilliant.
I think it's for me, it's very much about understanding the terminology and being careful with what we're throwing out there. So we can quite easily walk into a room, like at Blockchain Island. You walk into a room, there's people in there who are living and breathing the technology and understand the terminology that's been built up over the last period of time of growth. To turn around and start talking to people in a sporting context, people in sport, about degens and OGs and WAGMI and all of that sort of stuff, they just look at you in a bamboozle by what that means. And but likewise, I think we're all in a professional setting, we're all quite mindful of speaking to the audience we're talking to, right, and speaking in a language they understand. So I think it's just not to forget that stuff, because if we get some common understanding, I think it'll help us increase the adoption rate and getting people moving across quicker. The second question, in terms of Bigfan, and speaking to teams and clubs, we are early stage, and we are creating a SaaS solution. As I said before, it's effectively about enabling them to adopt the technology earlier than they might have done, based on internal resources and capacity and knowledge. And so making that as easy as possible for them to do. So I would simply encourage them to reach out to us if they've got an interest, if they've looked at this but not had the confidence to be able to go and ask. By all means, shout out. We'll certainly make time to sit down and try and understand what they know, what they think they know, what they don't know, and see if we can plot a path with them to get them in, because we're still within sport without the big checks flying around of seeing the reported fee to the Premier League of 30 million a year. When you're in a smaller rights holder, as we call our underdogs, they don't necessarily have the firepower, and likewise we're looking to enable them. So reach out, and we can certainly help if they're looking to head down that path.
I think it's really exciting, and with the news being full of sports and the intersection between sports and Web3, I think you have picked the perfect time, and I think 2023 could be your year, Kurt, and the year of Bigfan. So thank you so much for joining me today on Blockleaders.
Thank you, Lisa. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome.